You can have your
Main event of the evening.
ready to race to you.
These days are
Hello and welcome to These Days Are Ours, a Happy Days podcast. I'm Peter.
And I'm Joe.
And today we are discussing episode 4 of season 2 of The Fonz and the Happy Days Gang. It's all downhill from here.
Okay, Peter, tell us what happens in It's All Downhill From Here.
The time machine is about to blow its relativity rod.
Not the relativity rod!
It makes a quick landing on some jagged rocks, tilted to the side, and Mr. Cool almost falls out. Fonzie also fixes this, righting the machine with a snap of his fingers.
We gotta do something about that first step, something like this.
According to Cupcake's time band, they're in 1864 Greenland. The machine begins shaking. They're on top of a volcano, and it's about to blow. Richie spots a girl on a nearby cliff, and Fonzie, using an electrical cable from the machine's storage room, swings to her rescue. She says her name is Anna Olsen, and she's searching for her father, who disappeared on his quest to find a lost civilization at the center of the Earth.
He has been gone much too long. I am afraid something terrible might have happened to him.
The rest of the gang interrupt their discussion. Cupcake fixed the time machine, so they can go home now. Except they can't. Fonzie says they're taking Anna to the center of the Earth.
What a sense of humor!
I don't think he's joking, Ralph.
Well, that must be why I'm not laughing.
A goose runs out of a nearby cavern, carrying a torn piece of paper. She's Gretel, who travels with Anna's father, and the paper is half of a map. Two men were chasing after Gretel, Gustav Karst, a slender mustached man, and Sven,
Da, he is Ollie, you are Sven.
a big blonde guy in ill-fitting lederhosen. They have the other half of the map, and Gustav orders Sven to get Gretel's half.
The map is mine, and I'll take it now if you don't mind.
But Fonzie easily tosses him away. Cupcake then zaps the two of them away, but she's not sure where.
Where'd you send him? Alaska?
We've been leptons, I don't know.
The volcano suddenly erupts, blasting the time machine into the depths. The gang now has no choice but to go underground with Anna. On their route, they find markings in the walls directing them, and realize they must have come from Anna's father. Gustav and Sven reappear in the cavern, and chase after the gang and their half of the map.
What matters is getting to that legendary treasure at the center of the earth.
Sven starts a rock slide, and Cupcake's attempt to zap it away only causes the ground to open beneath them. Cupcake, Richie, and Ralph fall, but when they hit the ground, they somehow survive. Fonzie, Mr. Cool, Anna, and Gretel begin making their way down towards them. Gustav and Sven vow to catch up to them in the Petrified Swamp. Petrified Swamp is where Richie, Ralph, and Cupcake are, a place where all the plants are giant and made of stone. Gustav and Sven have, somehow, made it down there too, and chase the trio into a log. Sven is about to toss them into a pool of lava.
You won't get to me this time!
So Cupcake zaps the log into a cannon, and fires the three of them into the air. They land in front of Fonzie, Mr. Cool, Anna, and Gretel.
Well, of course. Another Cupcake rescue. I'd recognize that style anywhere.
They continue on their way, followed by Gustav and Sven. According to the map, they need to find a bent tree pointing to a cave, so Gustav and Sven twist it so it's pointing at another cave.
You got it twisted. We must insist.
When the gang go into that cave, everyone is sucked into quicksand, except for Ralph, who jumps in when Gustav and Sven show up. They now have both halves of the map, and a quick route to the treasure.
And a hot plate.
The gang, reunited underground, manage to escape by using a giant corkscrew Cupcake zaps to drill through the cave wall. They spot Gustav and Sven sailing down a nearby river, so Fonzie sends Mr. Cool to find seaweed.
Right, Reggie.
Richie and Ralph to collect driftwood, and sends everyone else to weaving. The gang builds a raft, but their attempt to catch up to our villains is interrupted by a plesiosaur.
Back off there, historic horror.
Fonzie encourages Cupcake to zap, and she creates a motor on the raft. They speed towards a collection of jagged rocks, and Fonzie's steering gets them through without crashing, but the plesiosaur gets stuck following them.
Fonzie, that was wonderful. You saved us all.
And what are heroes for?
They make it back on land, and discover a giant clam with Anna's father's marking. They head towards a tunnel with carvings that Anna recognizes from her father's notes, and they find themselves in the Lost City. Anna reunites with her father, who has been tied to a column by Gustav and Sven. Anna's father warns them that the two men have freed the Temple Guardian, a massive fire-breathing lizard.
You're in terrible danger. Sven and Gustav just tied me up and have gone to release the Temple Guardian.
Cupcake zaps up a giant roll of adhesive tape, which gives Fonzie an idea. He uses it to swing from a nearby stalagmite, then tapes the lizard's mouth shut. The entire area begins shaking.
Earthquake, a whole lot of shaking going on down there.
And the gang find their missing time machine. As lava begins to fill the chamber, the gang, along with Anna and her family, get inside the ship, and Fonzie brings in Gustav and Sven too.
Fonzie, look! Sven and Gustav!
Yeah, well, it's a cinch we can't leave them down here.
We can't?
The time machine rides the wave of lava back above ground, landing in front of a group of strangers. Once it's repaired, Fonzie bids Anna goodbye, and Mr. Cool does the same to Gretel, who gives him a kiss on the cheek, which looks really weird because of the beak.
Thank you, Peter. That was It's All Downhill From Here. It first aired back on October 10th, 1981. The Fonz and the Happy Days Gang was followed by the Richie Rich Scooby-Doo Show. This week, Scooby and his pals accidentally ruin a magician's act. Later, Scooby and company visit Olga's House of Mystery. CBS continued to air the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Show. And NBC had a new episode of The Smurfs. This week, Hefty and Handy compete for the affections of Smurfette.
Hello, Smurfette. We're smurfing a trap for that no-good cat Azrael. He's gonna find a not-so-smurfy surprise.
I think it's f***ing stupid.
So, Peter, of those three choices, what are you watching?
It must be hard to be a heterosexual Smurf, because there's only one singular female Smurf. If you are a heterosexual male Smurf, you basically have to get used to being polyamorous.
It would be very difficult. I do want to check out that episode of The Smurfs to see what develops there, because I don't remember Smurfette getting into any long-term relationships.
Because it would be weird.
It would be. It's All Downhill From Here. It was directed by Ray Patterson, George Gordon, and Rudy Zamora. It was written by Paul Haggis and Michael Moorer. Michael Moorer is the grandson of Moe Howard of the Three Stooges.
I'll kill you later.
He wrote extensively for animated shows and children's shows from the late 1970s to the late 2010s. Naturally, he got his start at Hanna-Barbera, writing on Dino Mutt and Laugh Olympics, but he worked for many studios over the course of his career. His credits include
Heathcliff, Richie Rich, Mr. T, The Littles, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Gummy Bears, Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Darkwing Duck, The Pirates of Darkwater, Handy Manny, Barney and Friends, Curious George, and many more.
He also worked on some live-action primetime shows, including Alf, The Love Boat, Who's the Boss, The Facts of Life, and Perfect Strangers.
Did he ever write for the Robotnik Stooges, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon about the Three Stooges, except they're Inspector Gadget-esque cyborgs?
Are you sure this is the right way to wallpaper, Mo?
Of course I'm sure. A smidge higher and it's lined up.
He did not, as far as I can tell. Apparently, Michael did not want to get in on the family business, I guess.
Maybe he didn't want accusations of being a Nepo baby. His grandpa is Moe Howard, but that doesn't mean he's going to bank on his grandfather's legacy. He's going to make his own way.
Paul Haggis is a Canadian writer, director, producer who had a great deal of success in TV and film from the 1980s to the 2010s. He got his start writing for animated series, and this was one of his earliest credits. He went on to create the TV shows Due South and Walker, Texas Ranger. He wrote such films as Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Flags of Our Fathers, and $1 Million Baby. He's probably best known for writing, directing, and producing the Oscar-winning film Crash from 2005. His career and reputation were seriously damaged in 2022 when, in a civil trial, he was found liable for sexually assaulting a publicist. He was also arrested that year for sexual assault in Italy, but the charges were dropped.
I knew his name. I knew that he had directed and written Crash. I knew that a lot of people really hate him for directing and writing Crash because it beat out a lot of other better movies to win Best Picture at the Oscars. I do remember hearing about the sexual assault.
As for guest stars this week, I want to point out Catherine Lee Scott as Anna Olson.
Thank you for rescuing me. I am Anna Olson.
Catherine is an actress from Minnesota who's been working in TV and film since the early 1970s. She's remembered best for her role as Maggie Collins on the gothic soap opera Dark Shadows.
Where is she? Who are you talking about? The little girl. She brought me here. She was with me.
Catherine's other credits include such TV series as
The Blacklist, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Star Trek The Next Generation, The A-Team, The Goldbergs, Dynasty, Hawaii Five-0, Quincy, and Magnum P.I.,
plus the films The Great Gatsby and A Rainy Day in New York. Weirdly, The Fonz and the Happy Days Gang is her only animated series. Peter, what did you think of Catherine Lee Scott as Anna Olson?
She's very good. She doesn't go for an accent of any kind, which is probably for the best. She does come across as very plucky, very determined, so that's fun. I'm a little bit surprised that this was her only voice role. Voice acting is not exactly the same skill as live action acting, as has been pointed out. Every so often, you'll get a big animated movie for children that'll cast some big name in a role that they aren't really suited for. I think the Super Mario movie casting Anya Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach was a bad choice. Taylor-Joy is a very good actress, but she doesn't have a very distinctive voice on her own, so I think that role could have gone to someone better at it.
Catherine Lee Scott was part of the ensemble voice cast for all of the Fonz and the Happy Days Gang, but this is the first time that there's a really identifiable character. She might also be in other episodes as Villager number 3 or something. As for cultural and historical references this week, this episode takes place in Greenland in the year 1864.
We're in 1864 Greenland!
The year is easy enough to explain, as this was when French novelist Jules Verne published Journey to the Center of the Earth. As for the geographical setting, the writers of this episode have substituted Greenland for Iceland, which is where Verne's story takes place. Virtually everything we see in this episode, from the climate to the volcano to the vaguely Scandinavian culture, sets the story in Iceland, not Greenland. Peter, why do you think they shifted the story to Greenland for this episode?
It might have been an honest mistake. It's entirely possible that they were just going off of their memories of Journey to the Center of the Earth and they didn't actually remember which country it took place in. But on the other hand, if they made enough effort to go for basic, small things that would make you think, yes, this is where it is set, then I don't know why it's Greenland instead. I guess this is just a case of American ignorance of the larger world.
Plot-wise, this episode takes virtually everything from the 1959 film adaptation of Journey to the Center of the Earth. James Mason stars in that film as a Scottish scientist who leads an Icelandic expedition to the Earth's core. He takes with him a student assistant, the widow of another scientist, and a local guide who brings his pet duck Gertrude along with him.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is James Mason. Come along with Pat Boone and me, Arlene Dole, Diane Baker, and Gertrude the duck.
Unfortunately for them, a wealthy and evil count wants to claim the underground treasures for his very own, and he does everything he can to sabotage Mason's expedition. Now, Peter, how familiar are you with the 1959 film of Journey to the Center of the Earth, which apparently varies pretty wildly from Jules Verne's original novel?
Not very familiar. Listening to your description of it, I think it's a great choice to inspire an episode of the Fonz and the Happy Days gang, because animal sidekicks are apparently something that it has in common with 90% of Hanna-Barbera.
In preparing for this podcast, I watched the 1959 film, and they took so much from it visually and plot-wise, and we'll get into that as we go along. Anna Olsen basically replaces Arlene Dahl's character Carla from Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Arlene Dahl, looking dollicious.
Well, Anna is the daughter of a missing explorer. Carla is the wife of a missing explorer. But Anna's father has merely been kidnapped, while Carla's husband has been murdered. So the bad guys in this episode are nicer than the ones in the movie. Although I don't know what's going to happen to the dad down there if they didn't rescue him. He doesn't have any food down there, so he's probably going to starve to death.
And the entire city is just devoid of people.
Gretel the goose is this episode's answer to Gertrude the duck from Journey to the Center of the Earth. Unfortunately, the villainous count kills and eats Gertrude. Aww. But if that makes you sad, that proves to be the Count's fatal mistake, and his death occurs just a few minutes later.
The moral of the story is vegetarianism.
Gustav Karst is this episode's version of the evil Count from Journey to the Center of the Earth.
You'll never find your companions or your way out.
The Count also has a sidekick / underling, but he's not a hulking man in lederhosen like Sven. I actually preferred the sidekick in this episode because, huge dude in lederhosen is pretty much comedy gold in my opinion.
He's very fun. I love him.
Fonzie refers to Sven as Svengali.
And the joke's on you, Svengali.
This is a famous fictional villain from George du Maurier's 1894 novel Trilby. He is a stereotyped Jewish character who seduces and controls a half-Irish girl and turns her into a famous singer. Svengali's name has come to mean any person who dominates another.
He has this power over me, okay? I mean, he has this way of manipulating every little word that I say. He's like a Svengali.
I'm very familiar with the term Svengali and how we use it, but I'm not all that familiar with the novel Trilby. How familiar are you with that material?
My main exposure to it was a short story that Kim Newman wrote, which was a crossover with that and The Phantom of the Opera, where Trilby and Christine are both secret agents under the employ of Eric the Phantom, except he's hypnotized them because they're both not very bright, so he has to hypnotize them to make them good at fighting and stuff. And the third member was Irene Adler, who was the only one who didn't need to be hypnotized. I read it a very long time ago, so I might be misremembering some of the details, but yeah, that's my main exposure to Trilby.
Once inside the volcano, the gang follow various marks along the trail. This same exact thing happens in Journey to the Center of the Earth, and the villains intentionally try to confuse and mislead the heroes with false clues. In some shots, you see giant mushrooms in the background. These also appear in Journey to the Center of the Earth. A few scenes later, the characters sink down into the sand and reemerge somewhere else. This also happens in Journey to the Center of the Earth, as well as the mole people from 1956. Peter, do you know the scene from the mole people that I'm talking about?
Yes.
That is a really cool effect. The prehistoric sea monster that our heroes encounter is similar to the dinosaurs from Journey to the Center of the Earth. In that film, though, the producers opted to use iguanas instead of stop-motion creatures.
And that iguana outgrew 6 tanks and ruined my floors with its urine.
Peter, I'm sure you've seen older science fiction films where they want to have dinosaurs or giant monsters, and they just film regular iguanas in close-up and ask us to... What do you think of those scenes?
Those are always fun. Work smarter, not harder.
The heroes in this episode eventually find an abandoned underground city, just like the characters do in Journey to the Center of the Earth. But in Journey, the city is revealed to be Atlantis.
I was driving in downtown Atlantis.
In both stories, the city is protected by a giant prehistoric monster, but the one in this episode is much more fearsome with its ability to breathe fire. And I have to believe that the reason why the city in this one is not Atlantis is because they've already kind of done 2 Atlantis stories already on Fonz and the Happy Days gang.
They did How Atlantis Was Sunk back in season 1, and earlier this season they did The Future Underwater City.
Our heroes are propelled back to the surface of the Earth by the force of the volcano, and yes, the same exact thing happens in Journey to the Center of the Earth. In this story, though, the heroes manage to save the lives of the villains. The heroes in Journey to the Center of the Earth do not. Other observations this week. For some reason, the artists and animators at Hanna-Barbera had a real knack for depicting giant monsters like the ones that we see in this episode, and they always seem to perk up for those kinds of scenes. What did you think of the monster depictions in this episode?
The first one was this sea monster that, in my notes, I described it as a plesiosaur, which was a kind of aquatic creature that lived alongside the dinosaurs. Sometimes it gets called a dinosaur, but it technically isn't, except for the fact that it's got a horn on the front of its head where its nose might be. I thought it was a really cool design and a lot of fun, and I'm very happy we got that one. And the Temple Guardian looks a lot like a Komodo dragon, but with bright red scales. And that one is also a lot of fun.
Fonzie says Perfectamundo.
Hey, Perfectamundo, we'll steer right into him.
It's always nice to get an amundo on the show. But my favorite line in the episode comes from the professor, played by Frank Welker. My child! My goose!
My father! My child! My goose!
Did you even notice that moment?
I did. I just love that he basically equivocates both of them. I guess if Gretel is his assistant, it kind of makes sense, but it is very funny.
Things Cupcake says this week.
Cosmic calamities, terrible time warps, sleeping leptons, moon craters twice. Richie and Ralph say it with her once. Neptune's moons 3 times.
And my favorite, sizzling sea monsters. There are some times when Mr. Cool makes things better. He fetches the electrical cable from the storeroom. He later collects some seaweed to help make the raft. As per times when Mr. Cool makes things worse, none. Mr. Cool is on a roll, Peter. He's not betraying them. He's not messing up their escapes. He's been doing pretty good work.
I think we can say officially that Mr. Cool is better than Chachi.
Oh, imagine if they'd been stuck with Chachi this whole series. Oh, how insufferable that would be.
What?
As for times when Mr. Cool suffers physically and mentally, he tumbles out of the time machine door and dangles perilously over a volcano. When Fonzie swings across the ravine to save Anna, Mr. Cool tags along accidentally and slams face first into the cliff. This is just background action and no one pays the slightest attention. He briefly gets swallowed by the giant clam and Sven and Gustav land on him. That dog should be dead by now.
Speaking of being dead, Richie, Ralph, and Cupcake somehow survive landing on solid ground after falling for a very great distance.
All I can say is that the heroes of Journey to the Center of the Earth survive some pretty gnarly stuff, and all of them except for the ducks survive. So, Peter, were there any outstanding Happy Days fashions in It's All Downhill from Here?
We already discussed Sven's lederhosen. Too small for him, but they do show off the fact that he definitely does not skip leg day. So I want to give a shout out to the people that the time machine lands in front of after they get away from the city at the center of the Earth. They do not look like they are from the 1860s. They're wearing these very puffy vests that look very, very 1980s.
I wanted to spend more time with these characters. I kind of got as fascinated with them as I do with the citizens of the Emerald City in The Wizard of Oz. I kind of want to know more about these strange people who live in the Emerald City, and now I kind of want to know more about these strange people who live in a village in Greenland and are apparently going to arrest the bad guys and put them in jail. I think that's the plan.
Fonzie tells them to, get the police or something.
All right, somebody point me to the nearest jail.
Which I don't know that they even seem to have. Peter, did you have any other observations you wanted to make about It's All Downhill from Here?
Fonzie does a vine swing twice in this episode. I know we've pointed out before that he does it basically once every episode, but this is starting to feel a little bit too repetitive. I'm fine with formula in my Saturday morning cartoons, but this is getting a little bit out of hand.
Are the characters self-aware about the vine swinging, rope swinging trope? Has anybody pointed it out on the show where they're aware of it?
I don't think they have. Nobody said anything like, oh, there's Fonzie doing his Tarzan swing again. He sure does love doing that. Cupcake does really, really well in this episode. Of the 4 times she zaps something, the one that goes wrong is when she and Richie and Ralph are falling, and she tries to zap them some parachutes, but she ends up just zapping them some balloons instead.
We're sunk! Circus balloons!
but they survive that, so there's that. But every other time, it is something that ends up being useful. She zaps a motor onto the raft. She zaps a giant piece of adhesive tape. She does zap away Gustav and Sven, but she ends up sending them deeper underground and closer to the city. But on the other hand, she did keep them safe in the short term, which let them triumph in the long term. Good for you, Cupcake.
Cupcake is very powerful, and I think it would be in their best interest to be encouraging and nice to her, because it seems like when they are, she's better at using her powers. So that's what I would tell the characters is don't be dismissive of her. Don't be mean to her all the time. Don't insult her all the time.
It's understandable frustration, given that she is the reason why they are hurtling through time and can't get home. But on the other hand, if everybody is constantly telling you that you're a up, then you're eventually going to internalize that, and that's going to make it hard for you to focus enough to properly use your omnipotent powers.
Exactly, Peter. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You treat her like a winner and she's a winner. You treat her like a loser and she's a loser. So, Peter, I will ask that age-old timeless question. Was this episode any good?
I don't know. There's a lot that I like in this episode. Cupcake gets to save the day a few times. 2 different awesome monsters, a very fun henchman, but I don't know, it didn't quite all come together for me. As I was watching this, the 2 times I watched it, I just kept thinking, this feels like it's dragging.
It did not feel like that for me at all. When I knew that this episode was based on the 1959 film of Journey to the Center of the Earth, I went back and watched that film immediately. It's a ton of fun. It's a very silly but very enjoyable 1959 sci-fi adventure film. And so when I watched this episode, all I was seeing was scenes and plot devices that they took from the movie directly. So for me, it was very satisfying. Oh, that's that scene, and oh, that's that character. Watching a parody of something is more satisfying when you're familiar with the original.
Or it retroactively ruins the original, like Airplane did for Airport 1975, because you spend the whole time watching it and laughing because you remembered funny stuff from the parody.
But in this case, I had a lot of fun with this episode, mainly because of its connections to Journey to the Center of the Earth. I don't know how it stands as a work on its own. Maybe if you just saw it on its own, maybe it doesn't hold up. I will say that did sway my review of it. I will give that as a caveat to any potential viewers. I would say the more familiar you are with the movie of Journey to the Center of the Earth, the more you will probably enjoy this parody of it. So, Peter, how can people keep up with us and find out about all the wonderful, wonderful things that we are doing?
Listeners can follow me on Blue Sky at petervolfram.bsky.social.
And they can follow me on Blue Sky at joeblevins.bsky.social. They can find this podcast online at thesedaysaroours.libsyn.com. And they can email us with questions, comments, and concerns at thesedaysaroourspodcast@gmail.com. So, Peter, what do we have on the docket for next week?
Next week, the Happy Days gang help the Princess of Siam against her evil stepmother in Double Jeopardy.
I don't know how to react to that, so I won't. See you later, alligator.
In a while, crocodile.
So fine, candy mine, totally too honey for a girl so fine. Wake up every morning when the clock strikes 6. Pick up my girlfriend and we pick up sticks, digging for her sweet love and I can't waste time working down that candy.
My child, my goose,